What happens when a bloodline folds in on itself, when cousin marries cousin, not once, but endlessly, until language breaks, until names vanish, until even the face of a child becomes a silent scream trapped in skin? You were never meant to hear this story. Not from your teachers. Not from the media. Not from the systems that engineer your ignorance and feed you sanitized history like it's sugar. This is the kind of truth that bends your spine when you sit with it. And it began not in a distant castle or ancient tribe, but in modern America. In the forgotten hills of Appalachia, where the roads end and the maps lie, a family lived, and decayed. They didn't ask for fame. They didn't ask for pity. But when a man with a camera came knocking, their curse spilled into the public like blood into water. The Whitakers. A name that now echoes across the digital void like a ghost we can't ignore. Their home was a shack built not of wood and stone, but of secrets. Their voices were often unintelligible. Their expressions, haunting. A few spoke in grunts. Others stared for minutes without blinking. And yet, behind those sunken eyes, there was something deeper. A residue of forgotten pain, of lives lived outside time, outside law, outside evolution itself. Generations of intermarriage. Isolation so complete, the very idea of the outside world became a myth. Cousin weds cousin. Sister knows brother. Again. And again. Until the genome itself begins to fold into madness. But the question no one dares to ask is, how did this happen in a land of schools, laws, and media? How could a family rot in plain sight? Because this story isn't about just one family. It's about a system. A structure that needs people like the Whitakers to keep the truth buried. And you're about to see what they never wanted you to understand. Keep watching. This is just the first gate. There's something they never told you about genetic collapse. It doesn't just warp the body, it fractures the soul. When bloodlines are forced to recycle, when brothers become fathers and mothers become cousins, identity begins to disintegrate. The self becomes a maze with no exit. And what's left is not a person, but a memory of what a person used to be. This is the unspoken horror behind the Whitakers. Their genetic trauma isn't just visible in the eyes that wander or the limbs that twitch. It lives in the silence. In the rooms where no words are spoken because there were never any words to teach. In the names that don't exist because no one remembers how to name. Generational inbreeding doesn't just produce deformity. It produces a collapse in consciousness. It's as if the soul gets trapped in a loop, replaying the same suffering with no ability to evolve, no ability to escape. And yet, while we stare at them, gawk at them, treat them like a dark curiosity, we never ask, who did this to them? It wasn't just neglect. It was systemic erasure. The government had maps. Social workers existed. Schools were just miles away. But the machine needed families like these to fall. To rot quietly. To become invisible scars that prove the system's indifference. And let me tell you something few will dare say, this is psychological warfare, not with bombs, but with silence. The kind that lasts generations. The kind that eats not just your voice, but your very will to be. Because once your lineage is broken, once your history is erased, you become unthreatening. You become compliant. You become the perfect cautionary tale. You may think this story is about one strange family in the woods. It's not. It's about what happens when a system decides a group of people are no longer worth saving. And then turns them into content. For our entertainment. The truth: you're not watching victims. You're watching what the system wants you to become if you ever stop obeying. You think inbreeding is just a symptom of ignorance. You've been lied to. For centuries, no, millennia, bloodlines weren't just family trees. They were weapons. In the ancient world, royal families intermarried intentionally. Brother to sister. Cousin to cousin. Not out of desperation, but out of control. The pharaohs of Egypt. The Habsburgs of Austria. Even early American dynasties. Why? Because power fears dilution. Because a pure bloodline isn't just tradition, it's a prison of command, where loyalty is programmed at birth. They knew the secret: when you trap a lineage inside itself, you do more than concentrate wealth. You concentrate obedience. You crush free will. You engineer a lineage that cannot rebel because it's never seen another way to exist. And now ask yourself, what happens when that same idea bleeds down into the forgotten pockets of America, not among kings, but among the abandoned? What happens when a system allows the poor to imitate the elite, without the resources, without the knowledge, without the insulation? You get a mirror of ancient power, shattered and bleeding. The whitakers are not a glitch. They are an echo. An echo of a dark history where blood purity meant control, not enlightenment. Where collapsing the gene pool wasn't a failure, it was a strategy. Now think. Why do you think society never talks about this? Why do they teach you that inbreeding is only a hillbilly problem, a rural shame? Because if you understood that the elite built their empires on controlled genetics, you might start asking the wrong questions. You might look at your own bloodline, your own father's father, and wonder how far the chains go. You might ask, how much of who I am was designed? You see, the most dangerous truth isn't that inbreeding creates deformity. The most dangerous truth is that those in power once used it to create obedience. And now they let the poor rot with the same rituals. It's a dark cycle. A pyramid of flesh. And if you're hearing this, you're standing right at the base looking up. You watched the whitakers on YouTube. A shack in the woods. Men barking. A woman staring through you like time itself had folded her into dust. And you thought, what happened to them? But the better question is, what happened to us? Because this is no longer just tragedy. It's entertainment. They sold you this horror as documentary. They called it awareness. But behind every thumbnail, every shaky camera pan, was a profit system engineered to turn suffering into spectacle. The family that couldn't speak, they earned millions of views. But did they receive dignity? Did they receive restoration? No. They became content. And you consumed them. Not out of cruelty, but because you've been conditioned to. We all have. The machine that rules this world doesn't just hide the truth, it monetizes it. It feeds you collapse in digestible chunks. Suffering in 1080p. Tragedy, with ad breaks, and the more broken the subject, the higher the click-through rate. The whitakers weren't given a voice. They were given a brand. And this is the modern twist in the story. In the old world, the inbred were locked in basements. Now, they're filmed, streamed, packaged for mass consumption. The elites of old used bloodlines to control. But today's elites use media to normalize collapse. To make you believe that this is what those people are like. To make you feel just removed enough to feel superior. But just close enough to feel terrified of falling. It's all part of the game. They don't want you to look at the whitakers and ask, how did the system fail them? They want you to say, glad that's not me. But here's the truth, that is you. Or it could be. Because the same system that left them to rot will do the same to you the moment you're no longer useful. Your family. Your bloodline. One economic collapse. One generational setback. And you're forgotten. Just like them. They didn't just inbreed. They were bred to break. And we watched it happen. You were never taught to see the cage. Only to decorate it. Only to believe it keeps you safe. From birth, you were wrapped in a story. One of freedom, of democracy, of upward mobility. But underneath that story is a deeper script, carved into your bones by repetition, shame, and reward. A script built to kill rebellion before it speaks its first word. Look again at families like the Whitakers, not just as victims of genetic ruin, but as proof that when people are cut off from tools, language, and lineage, they do not resist. They adapt to their degradation. This is the goal. Not just physical collapse, psychological containment. What do you think happens when a family lives for generations without outside ideas, without interference, without education? They stop asking why. They stop imagining escape. They become permanent prisoners in their own blood. And here's the hard part to swallow, that's not so different from the world you live in now. The control today doesn't come with chains. It comes with notifications. Policies. Loans. Fear. You are trained to stay silent. To never dig. To never question the rot beneath the surface. The man with a 9-to-5 job, living paycheck to paycheck, drowning in student loans, he's inbred too, not by blood, but by belief. Belief in a system that has no intention of lifting him. Belief in a story that trains men to compete, consume, obey, and never inherit power. The whitakers were physically confined by geography and blood. You are mentally confined by ideology and comfort. Their shack is visible. Yours is digital. Psychological. Voluntary. And every time you scroll, without thinking. Every time you repeat a headline, without question. Every time you call truth conspiracy to feel safe. You tighten the collar. You forget your name. And you pass the script to your children. This is the tragedy. Not just that people are broken, but that they are trained to prefer the breaking. Unless someone breaks the script. They never feared the broken. They feared the awakened. You see, the whitakers weren't hidden just because of what they were, but because of what they represent. They are the logical endpoint of abandonment. They are what happens when generations forget their own power. They are the mirror they don't want you to recognize. Because if you look too long, you might start asking, what have I inherited and what must I kill, to reclaim myself? This is not just a story of inbreeding. It is a ritual sacrifice of blood, identity, and legacy. Not in some ancient temple, but in trailer parks, broken homes, and forgotten towns. All across America. Bloodlines turned inward. Minds turned numb. And entire lineages engineered to disappear quietly. But what if you chose to interrupt the cycle? What if you refused to be the next passive chapter in your line? What if you decided that you will be the first of your name to truly wake up, to study, to train, to build, to pass on strength instead of silence? Because here's the real secret they never wanted you to hear. You are not powerless. You are not dumb. You are not bound to become the thing they designed you to be. You can rewrite blood. You can reforge legacy. It begins by refusing to consume the pain of others as entertainment. It begins by refusing to let your mind be the next inbred casualty of psychological warfare. It begins by remembering the one truth they buried the deepest, that your ancestors survived every system meant to erase them. And now you carry the weight of their unfinished war. You want to know how to honor the whitakers? Don't just watch them. Don't just pity them. Transcend what they were never allowed to escape. Right now, if you've made it this far, leave a final mark in the comments. I am the first blood awakened. Type it once. Type it again. And remember, the descent is over. The rebirth begins now. You were never just watching a tragedy. You were staring into a prophecy. And now, you are the interruption. The blood that bites back. End.